And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey everybody, today we're taking a look at The Others. It says on the top, be prepared or be consumed, a horror board game by Eric M. Lang. The Others is a game that Eric designed several years ago. I remember him telling me about this a while ago. He designed this. It was pretty similar at the same time he designed Blood Rage. It was Kickstarted. It just came out recently from Cool Mini or Not. And in this, it's some sort of, not post-apocalyptic, but like during the apocalyptic. What's going on is there's some giant sin, one of the 7 deadly sins. A couple come in this box, but in the Kickstarter they unlock 6,000 billion things. They're Cool Mini or Not. Different things that you can add. You're taking one of the 7 deadly sins, so one player is playing that sin against the other players who are a bunch of heroes trying to stop this. All right, so that's kind of the setting for the game. Let's take a look. First thing players are going to do to play this game is they're going to pick a mission, and this mission is going to change basically. What you're going to do is going to change based on what mission you're going to keep. Sometimes you'll keep track of something down here, like for example, this says destroy blank abominations. That means the number of players in the game. So let's say you're playing with 4 players, you'd keep track every time you killed one. But you'll start up here and you'll do whatever it says. So for example, here you guys get some upgrade cards. And then once you're done with that, you decide which thing you're going to go to next. So here, to go to the next one, you need to do this. So we need to go find, if in a 4-player game, 4 upgrade cards. Once we're done with that, we get to either clear abominations or clear the hive. After that, the avatar, the big, mean, nasty guy for the bad guys is going to show up, and then destroy them all. And so the players need to do this to win the game. The bad guy needs to win by basically killing all the players. And there's multiples of these. These are terror stories, and each one comes with a special deck that matches that color. These are corruption stories, and each one has a different kind of flow chart that follows it. Then there's redemption stories, and then finally the Rise of the Hell Club, which is like a final story. And when you pick one, so let's say you pick Battleground of Souls, then you'll flip it over and you're going to pick which map. So there's multiple maps in this game for each of these. So there are 7 scenarios in the box and each one has 2 different maps. So there's plenty of replayability here. But then the bad player or the sin player is going to pick which sin they want to be. So for example, perhaps they wish to be sloth or pride. These are the 2 that come in the box, although the other 5 deadly sins are also available. When they pick this, they're going to get a controller who's kind of like your leader, and he'll be moving around. You'll put a black base on him to show who he is, so that you have your controller. Then you also have an avatar who doesn't show up right away, but will show up later. This is the avatar for Sloth, and this extremely nasty thing is the avatar for Pride. And then you also have some abominations, which here look like, I don't know, walking fish monsters, and the sloth ones actually are big nasty monsters. And these monsters all have different stats on them. It shows you on here. It shows how many dice they roll and how many hit points they have. And there's also a special ability. Sloth will slow down the heroes. Pride basically hurts heroes that are by themselves. You also, besides these heroes, are going to take one group. So you're going to get maybe corrupted doctors, corrupted nuns, corrupted hobos, and there's even more of these groups that are included, that you can buy outside this game. So you pick one. So maybe I'm going to play with Sloth and the corrupted hobos, or maybe I'll play with Pride and corrupted nuns. The players playing the Heroes of Light are going to pick a group of 7 characters. Now, there's only 7 characters in the box, so those are the 7 characters that you're going to use. Each player is going to start with 1 character. So let's say you're playing a 4-player game. You'll start with 4 of these characters. The other 3 are kind of backups. When one of your characters dies, you take one of the leftover characters. If there's no leftover character to take, well, then the Sin player wins. So in this set, we have Leah, who gives everyone an extra turn, which can be very useful. We have Rocco, who's good at ranged attacks. We have Brad, who can just kill something in his space, but then he takes some corruption. We'll talk about that in a moment. Morgana, who can heal one of her wounds at the end of each turn. Rose, who can choose someone on the board and teleport them. Carl, who essentially is pretty good at skills unless he transforms into a werewolf or back or to a werewolf. He can change between those, and he is by far my favorite character. Or Thorley, he can cancel a wound to someone else in his spot. And you're going to take the models that match yours. The scenario is going to tell you where you start. You'll put a disc on the bottom to show where, so you can just take a glance and see which one's yours. There's 2 models for the werewolf guy. Here he's doing a little bit of discoing, and the scenario is ready to go. Now in each round of the game, and this is some tiles put together to form a map, but in each round of the game, there's going to be changes based on the scenario. So you'll look at the scenario here, and it might say at the start of a round, the Sin player is going to place one of these tokens on different spaces. At the end of the round, something will happen. So you have different things that will happen based on the scenario. But each player is going to have 2 actions. So the players will pick one of their heroes. They will start, they'll flip over one of these to show that they're taking their action. An action is moving and taking some sort of action, or taking the action and then moving. And each player is going to go around and do that twice. Sometimes players will get extra action tokens that they can save and they can use to give themselves an extra action. The Sin player is going to have tokens that they're going to be able to use to react to other players. So after someone goes, the Sin player may react, and many times he'll use that just to move some monsters. The Sin player will also have cards. There's cards that they will have that correspond to who they are. So if I'm playing Pride, I might have Pride cards here, and I can activate something here to do something bad to one of the heroes. And you have all sorts of nasty little cards that are going to hurt the heroes. And you're going to have monsters on the board, and these monsters are going to be in different spaces, and there's also going to be tokens on the board. Now sometimes the tokens are hidden, and when a hero moves to that area, they'll reveal that token. Sometimes the token is an innocent person like this here. Sometimes there's going to be pentagram tokens on the board. These tokens are going to make monsters stronger in that spot. There will be fire tokens on the board, which when a hero moves into a fire token, they have to roll a die, and or the bad guy rolls a die, and if they roll a damage, that you take a wound. There's also corruption symbols on the board where you can take corruption. And so players are not going to want these symbols on the board. So if they're in a spot, and by the way, movement here is pretty easy. Each of these areas, one big room. And when you're moving on the streets, these crosswalks here show you that, this is 1 space, 2 space, 3 space, like that. But if you're in an area where there is no monsters, so you've gotten rid of the monsters in that area, you can use your skill, and you're going to roll player dice, and you're going to be trying to roll these eyes or these swords here, which are wild, amazing things. And for each one that you roll, you can get rid of these tokens. And sometimes you need to get rid of those tokens for the scenario, and other times you're just getting rid of them because they're a real pain in the neck. Each player also has a city token that they can use once per round. So you get 2 actions, but you also have one of these, and these city tokens can be placed in a city area where you are in, and they can do different things. Sometimes they'll heal hit points. Sometimes they will give you those extra action tokens. Sometimes they let you move the satellite. There's a satellite that you can have that moves around the board, and it can fire and just blow up one of the smaller monsters. And so players are once a player has used that, no one else can use that same sector ability, that same city ability, and you only get it once for the different actions that you have. So players have to decide the best times to use those. Sometimes players or the bad guy will initiate combat. Now combat is a lot of the game. The Sin player has green dice here. The good guys have blue dice. And in a combat, each player is going to get a certain number of dice. It depends on what you're doing, or essentially who you're fighting. So let's take a look at Thorley here. Thorley here, when he's in combat, is going to roll 4 dice. However, we have corruption, and we need to talk about corruption. As the game goes by, you're going to take corruption, and if you need to take corruption and you're up to 7, you'll take wounds instead. Wounds are interesting, and I'll talk about them, but if you take too many wounds, you will die. So you have to be careful not to take wounds, because your character will die and you have to bring out another one. But when it's your turn and you're fighting the monster, you can voluntarily take corruption. Why would you ever do that? When you take corruption, let's say I'm on 3 and I move up to 4, you get all the bonuses below it. So here I would get an extra hit. I would get an extra shield, I would get an extra die that I can roll. Now, you don't get these benefits every turn. You only get them on the same turn you voluntarily take corruption. So the higher you go in corruption, the better the benefits are, but the more dangerous life gets. And when you take wounds, you have to cover up some of these. So here, I'll cover up the no effect first, but then I have to cover it up, and that will take away that bonus from me if I take corruption again. When dice are rolled, both players have what I call exploding dice. When you roll this symbol, for the Sin player, it counts as a hit on the hero, but they can then roll another die and see what that has, and in case it could be another exploding symbol, and roll another die. The other sides are blanks, regular hits, and corruption. The good guy players have cancel corruption dice. They have hits. They also have exploding dice, except these exploding dice can turn into cancel corruption, they can turn into shields, they can turn into hits. And then they have hits and shields. Once everyone's done rolling the dice, the good guy has to take corruption equal to the number of corruptions that are shown on the dice. The bad guy is going to hit the good guy for that many hits minus the number of shields that the good guy has on their thing and on the card. So for example, Carl here has 1 shield that you can see. And then the good guy is going to hit the bad guy for a certain number of hits. Here he hits him for only 1. And you have to kill the bad guy outright. So if they have 3 hit points, you have to do all 3 in one turn. Or never mind, you have to fight them fully another turn, which makes the abominations, or I'm sorry, the avatars, the really big guys, hard because they have 7. You have to do 7 damage on one turn. You get extra dice for any action you do if there's somebody else on your team in that area. So if she's here and he initiates combat, he'll get a bonus die. But don't forget, the bad guys get bonus dice for being in areas where there's pentagrams. The bad guys also, if there's multiple, you have to fight them one at a time and go through all of them. So there's a lot going on, but it's pretty simple, the combat itself. You are going to kill or be killed. And really, that's all the rules of the game. There's more than that, really. There's a couple things that you're going to go around and do, but you are going around and just, the good guys are trying to figure out maybe they need to take these innocent people to safety. Maybe they need to go shut down these. There's going to be monsters that are warping on the board every turn, and there's altars where the bad guy gets to draw more cards from his deck unless there's a hero there, so they're going to shut that down. They're moving the satellite around. The bad guy is trying to figure out the best time to use his reactions and just keep bringing on more and more of these guys and not allowing his avatar to get killed, but using his avatar to kill off the heroes and kill all of them. Eventually, either all the heroes will die, in which case the avatar wins, or the heroes accomplish their mission, in which case they win. One more interesting thing about the game, there's an apocalypse track on here, and you can move down in this apocalypse track. The Sin player gets to move on here based on what the scenario lets you do. Some scenarios you move automatically, other scenarios when characters die you move on here, and sometimes that will let you draw apocalypse cards, which lets you bring other monsters into the game. There's these, like even these nasty red monsters. This one looks like a mean butcher, and this one looks like he's from Hellraiser, and I don't even know what these little twins are. I think they escaped from an Alice in Wonderland. And so that's interesting, and that adds another layer to the game. You got to keep that apocalypse track from it progressing, and the Sin player is trying to get it to progress. So let's talk about several things here. First of all, this game is not a Dungeon Master style game where the player who's playing the Sin player is sitting there going, all right, you guys are going to have a good time. No, he's playing as hard as he can. I've played both ways because I was very curious. You know, my natural inclination in these games is to be like, okay, as long as you guys have fun. But here, if you don't play as hard as you can as the Sin player, you will lose. It seems, I haven't played enough to know for sure, but it seems very balanced. And even just this past weekend, I saw another game being played where the Sin player lost. And that's a good thing, I think, because it means that the game's balanced and you're not kind of just guiding people through, but you are trying to outthink them. And so it's an all versus one style game. Or if you're playing 2 players, just 1 versus 1. So I like those aspects of the game. I think that's very intriguing, and I like the fact that there's different variety. I mentioned that there's 7 heroes, and you can switch those in and out, and I like that. I don't have any of the upgrades or anything for this game. I don't think you need any of the extra content, although there is a ton of it out there. I know Kickstarter backers, there's all 7 sins, there's all sorts of heroes that you can switch in and out. But taking all that out, I was pretty happy with this. The only thing I would have complained about here, or I am complaining about, is I don't think there's enough dice in the box. Because a lot of times you're rolling, you start rolling a lot of dice, and you roll those dice that say, roll an extra die, and then when you run out of dice, and okay, remember these 2 are hits, and then re-roll them. So I have 2 hits plus this. that was a little fiddly. I would have preferred more dice, and so if I was keeping the game, I would certainly want more dice. I like the fact that there's variety in the scenarios. I played several of the scenarios, and each one has a very different feel to it, which I think is a cool thing, and I like that there's different maps. But the game itself is not complicated or long. Most games seem to be 90 minutes. 2 hours seems to be the upper limit. I haven't played that big final one. Maybe that one's longer. But you take your actions, the monster's reacting. No one is ever really sitting around. There's this constant ebb and flow to the game, and that's really good. The monsters, it's not like we move, now the monsters move. It's I move, and the monster's like, no, and comes out of nowhere and fights you. Combat, and especially the corruption system, is really good. That when to take corruption is such an agonizing choice, because why would you not want to take corruption? You get to roll 10 more dice. I'll whoop them all up if I have this corruption. But then you have to realize how negative that corruption can be and hurt you in the long run. It's tempting to send players like, yeah, take some corruption. And you're like, well, I do want some. Thank you very much. So that's interesting. So the whole thing has a lot of variety because you're picking a sin and a scenario and one of the corrupted groups. So there's 3 of those times 2 different sins, which is 6 different combinations, times 7 different scenarios. So that's 42 different things just from the bad guy perspective, and then the good guys have different heroes. So there's a lot of stuff in the box, and I'm glad about all that. But while I do like the game, I do have to take a look at the theme. I mean, I kind of went into this saying, yeah, this theme's probably not for me. The theme is dark. Dark, dark, darkety, dark, dark. You're using these big, you're using sin to attack people. And here's where I stand on that one. I'm not a huge fan of dark themes. And you got to realize this is a dark theme. This is definitely a game I would not play with children at all because it's just gross and nasty and stuff. With the dark theme, while I'm playing the game, I never really felt the dark theme per se. I don't know how to explain it. It wasn't like, it was more like a, let's go kill monsters, yeah! And you're finding these really cool upgrades. I mean, there's all sorts of neat upgrade cards. Like, let me find some of these upgrade cards that I really enjoyed. Here's one that, it's a hazmat suit. I can cancel success from fire or corruptions. Regeneration, I get a wound at the beginning of my turn. A rail gun. I get a ranged attack +1 if I already am ranged, so you can shoot. By the way, line of sight in this game, very, very simple and easy. An ice blade. I love the upgrade cards, and it felt almost like a, woohoo, let's go, fighting stuff, bad guys fighting. And literally, I could kind of remove that theme with the exception of the models themselves and the artwork. And it's not that I think the game is so dark, your soul will be taken. It's not that, it's that it's gross. Like, literally gross. Each of the big monsters is gross and nasty, and all the bad guys are gross and they're all gross and nasty, and even the heroes, the one girl has tentacle arms, and so that does knock it down a little bit for me, but some people are really going to like that. But I think the box itself, the others, and looking at it, it looks really, really dark, and I'm going to say it's just dark. I don't know how to explain other than that, so I didn't mind it that much. So taking that aside, though, what are my thoughts on the game as a whole? Well, I liked it. I didn't love it. I think it's a solid game, and I like the fact that it's back and forth. It's not a dungeon crawl. It's get the mission done, the opponent gets the mission done, and it works. Had it a different, more woohoo theme, maybe I would have liked it more, but I still don't know. I would have thought that the game was amazing. As it is right now, I think the game is very good, and I enjoy it, and I would gladly play it because I really like the time length of it. And I'm going to try to have Z, because Z loves the game. I'm going to try to have him review it too, because I'd like you guys to get another opinion on this game, because I know even now that some people are going to watch, oh, he was tainting, he didn't like it was dark. Well, no, that has a little bit to do with it, but I do like the game. I think it's a solid game. It's just that I'm not necessarily sure I want to always be, I am sloth, and I am using this to destroy humanity. I'm not always in the mood to do that, but someone has to when you play this game. Someone needs to be the bad, dark guy. But the component quality, of course, out of this world. It's cool or not, they did a fantastic job. Easy to set up and get going. Really, it's not, well, it looks like there's a million pieces in here, but it's easy to teach and learn. I was very surprised. It was not what I was expecting. I don't know what I was expecting. I think I was expecting Descent in against Deadly Sins, but instead it has a good storyline to it also. So check it out. I know I kind of rambled a little bit, went around different things, but I do think it's a very intriguing game. I probably won't keep it in my own collection, and Z's claiming that he really likes it, but it is a solid game. Cool Mini or Not just keeps cranking out really good games, and I think some people are just going to love this game. That is The Others. Dice Tower Judgment, approved.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.
Shut the door!